Hi everyone, John Monroe here, just making a little introductory video to welcome students, MA students, to the distance learning module entitled Globalization since 1945. Hi everybody, welcome to the class. I'm just gonna take a little walk around here. You can see, those who know campus will know exactly where I am, but I like to make a video outside to also show the distance learning students who do not regularly come to campus, or maybe will never come here, give you a little bit of a look at the place. So I'm just having a little walk around. It's a little bit cold here, early January, and I thought I'd say a little bit about the module as a way to welcome you and give you a bit of a sense of what's coming up over the next few weeks. So Simon Jackson is the convener for the module, so he's kind of the official person running it, but we're both 50-50 on this one. I'm with you for the first 5 weeks, and Simon will be with you for the second 5. So I guess I'll say just something about globalization, a word I'm sure you have heard before. It's quite a 20th century term, and just looking at which way I want to walk here. Okay, there's a little bit of works going on here, but I think we can go this way. So it's a bit of a 20th century term, but it's the kind of what it describes. The word is less important. It was a word that you heard everywhere in the 1990s. I'd say the 1990s is the term, the period in which, at least in my memory, globalization was kind of everywhere as a concept. But it's pretty basic in terms of what it means. The word kind of tells you it all. Interconnection at planetary scale. And there's several different ways you can define it, but I've pulled up a definition here that doesn't use the word globalization. It's a little earlier than that, but it is one that you might be familiar with. So let me quote here for a minute. Quote, "Constant revolutionizing of production, uninterrupted disturbance of all social conditions, everlasting uncertainty and agitation distinguish the bourgeois epoch from all earlier ones. All fixed, fast frozen relations with their train of ancient and venerable prejudices and opinions are swept away. All new formed ones become antiquated before they can ossify. All that is solid melts into air. All that is holy is profaned, and man is at last compelled to face with sober senses his real conditions of life and his relations with his kind. The need of a constantly expanding market for its products chases the bourgeoisie over the entire surface of the globe. It must nestle everywhere, settle everywhere, establish connections everywhere. The bourgeoisie has, through its exploitation of the world market, given a cosmopolitan character to production and consumption in every country. To the great chagrin of reactionists, it has drawn from under the feet of industry the national ground on which it stood. All old established national industries have been destroyed or are daily being destroyed. They are dislodged by new industries whose introduction becomes a life and death question for all civilized nations, by industries that no longer work up indigenous raw material, but raw material drawn from the remotest zones, in industries whose products are consumed not only at home, but in every quarter of the globe. In place of the old wants satisfied by the production of the new country, we find new wants requiring for their satisfaction the products of distant lands and climes. In place of the old local and national seclusion and self-sufficiency, we have intercourse in every direction, universal independence of nations. And as in material, so also in intellectual production, the intellectual creations of individual nations become common property. National one-sidedness and narrow-mindedness become more and more impossible. And from the numerous national and local literatures, there arises a world literature." So many of you will recognize what this is from. Of course, it's Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Communist Manifesto back in 1848. So you get a sense here, obviously, with Marx and Engels, an emphasis on the economic integration at a transnational scale, which of course would be their primary interest. But notice that those remarks at the end about intellectual production, literature, and so on, there's definitely a kind of cultural component to this integration and interaction that we'll be exploring in this module in the post-1945 era. So given that this is an MA level module, we will be looking more at kind of concepts rather than tracing a history of events. We'll be reading a different book each week, and each of those books will speak to a different theme. And so This also means it will be kind of inescapably historiographical and inescapably interdisciplinary as well as we proceed. Lots of events along the way, but we'll be proceeding in a thematic kind of way. So the class will be assessed by an essay. There'll be more details about that forthcoming, but an essay at the end will be the primary way in which you will be assessed for the module. And in that essay, you'll have some choice, obviously, in what you're going to write about, and definitely the questions will be pitched at a very kind of broad theme level for you to explore the themes that most interest you, but also to make connections between different themes of the module as well. So each week, your main assignment is to read the book that's assigned and participate in the discussion boards, and I look forward to engaging with everybody there. I think the two primary questions that you want to think about, ask yourself, and answer in terms of your engagement with the discussion boards is just essentially, what is this book arguing, one, and two, what do I think of that argument? What is my take on it? Do I agree, disagree, why not, etc. And just thinking about those two questions, what does it say and what do I think about that, will get you pretty far, I think. So let me say just a little bit about the multiple themes of the module that we'll be looking at as a way to quickly introduce them. Obviously, each week I'll have a video introducing the subject matter for each of the 5 weeks that I'll be with you, 4 more after this one. And so next week, in week 2, we'll be looking at the theme of racial capitalism, a concept not coined by Cedric Robinson, but definitely a term that his work is very central and influential in thinking about. So we'll be talking about Robinson, but we'll be reading Adam Gedachio's World Making After Empire: The Rise and Fall of Self-Determination, a book that, well, I'm not going to say too much detail about each of the books because we'll see them each week as we go, but this is a book, I think, that we can say engages with the concept of racial capitalism, and we can discuss what we think about that when we get to it. In week 3, our big theme will be the Cold War, and here we'll be reading Reem Abdul Fadl's Foreign Policy as Nation-Making, Turkey and Egypt in the Cold War. So not necessarily the places that we think of as necessarily center stage when we think about the Cold War, and that's very important because, as you'll see, that's going to give us a different perspective on what we even think the Cold War is or might be. Week 4, we're turning to mobilities, and that speaks actually to where I began this little walk and introduction at the train station we have here at campus. But we'll be thinking about this in a different way, thinking about automobility and car culture as a kind of way of thinking about. In this case, it'll be in the United States, but we'll be thinking about this in a global sense, especially in a city like Birmingham as well. Week 5, we turn to decolonization, and here we'll be reading Glenn Coulthard's Redskin White Masks, Rejecting the Colonial Politics of Recognition. And in this book, we'll be turning to kind of indigenous studies, definitely some political theory, and thinking about settler colonialism in a kind of long historical perspective, and very much how that continues to define the present in that example. And this week, I should say, the book that'll be first up by way of kind of introduction to the module is Quinn Slobodian's, I have it here, Crack Up Capitalism. I always like to have a physical copy of the book, and I have this one, Market Radicals and the Dream of a World Without Democracy. So it's interesting, when we think about globalization, let me just show you, here's the clock tower if you haven't seen it before. When we're thinking about globalization, it's often, again, kind of as Marx and Engels described, there's the Arts Building, by the way, there's Muirhead Tower, there's the library. When we think about globalization, as Marx and Engels kind of encouraged us, and many others have done so from a variety of perspectives, it's often about considering the relationship between the nation and other larger scales of interconnection, continental and indeed global. What Slobodian does in this book is he gets us to think about a different kind of space of sovereignty, the zone. And so therefore it's an economic history, but it's definitely an intellectual history as well, of the idea of the zone. And we'll meet a lot of quite a cast of characters in this book as we make our way from London to Singapore to Dubai to South Africa, to a number of different kind of sites to look at this space of sovereignty and what it means for the present. And also there's something about this book. I mean, Slobodian is a historian, and he's drawing on the fairly recent past, but there's a way in which this book speaks to potential futures as well. And there's ways in which this book, maybe in light of the election of Donald Trump, subsequent to this book coming out, makes this book maybe more relevant as well. So we start by thinking about history, thinking about globalization, very recent history, and maybe thinking a little bit about the future as well. But that remains to be seen for the discussion boards. So with that, I'll leave this here as one more look at the campus. Welcome to the class, and I'll see you on the discussion boards.